This is the sixth iteration of a live action Batman on the big screen. So it kind of begs the question like, how do you keep that fresh? How do you keep that interesting, right? For people to come back, keep coming back and being even remotely interested in seeing a new Batman? The answer is actually not all that complicated, right? Very simply, it's just give us something different, right? You could still have the same character and present them in a different light, in a different dynamic, right? While still keeping the essence of that character alive. It's the reason why I love Spider-Man Homecoming so much, because for the first time, compared to the Amazing Spider-Man and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, it's the first time that we were seeing Spider-Man in a world where other heroes already existed, and that small factor alone provided a world of difference to see Spider-Man in a completely different way. And that's what this movie does so well as well. We've never seen a Batman like this. We've never seen a Batman where he's not like we see him just at the beginning starting out like we did in Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, and we're not seeing him experience and kind of settled into the role, right? Having experienced a lot like we did with Ben Affleck's iteration of the character. This is a Batman that's been doing this for a while now, for a year, right? To be exact. And he's kind of worn down. He's kind of beaten down. He's gone through the thick of it. Presumably already faced the likes of villains such as the Joker and who knows who else. Who knows what he's seen and what he's gone through already. And ultimately, he's not seeing much change. He's not seeing much of an effect of, in his efforts to squash crime in the city that he loves and he wants to make better. And so we're seeing Batman frustrated and angry and kind of resentful and very raw and emotional, something that we haven't seen in any other Batman movie. And that premise alone is enough to grab your interest. From the very first moment that the character is introduced, it's a clear message, right, being told to the viewer that's this is a Batman that is not messing around. This is Batman who's out there to get the job done. He doesn't care what he has to do. He doesn't care who he has to get around. And it's important to notice that this is a Batman whose relationship to the public is not on best terms either, right? Like, he's still starting out and there's a lot of apprehension towards him and what he's doing. He's still mentioned as a vigilante, right? He's not even known by name. The police force is not all that happy about him. The only one on his side is Gordon, and even the general public doesn't see him as the hero that we all know him to be. These differences even come down to affect the wardrobe and the gear that Batman is using, right? It's opting for a much more realistic, I would say, approach to his suit, right? More being armored, right? As opposed to just like kind of maybe like a leather or something that we've seen before. A much more like thicker, sturdier armor, something that makes it believable when he's actually taken hits from metal bats and straight up just bullets being shot right from point blank range. His bat suit reflects that as well. It reflects a story that's a lot more gritty, a lot more realistic, which, by the way, does happen. This movie does not stray away from the fact that Batman takes some hits. He definitely takes blows. I love this. I absolutely love this. The movie made a tremendous effort to make that realism believable, right? Make it palpable, make it something so that the viewer is more easily able to kind of digest everything and actually, take it on a believable level, right? Sure, it's still Bruce Wayne and he's, he has his money and such, but it's not done in a very flashy way like we've come to see in a lot of the previous iterations, right? This is also reflected in the design of his vehicles, the motorcycle that he rides, and even the the Batmobile. Very, I would say, much more traditional, right? Not as flamboyant as we've seen in iterations of the past. The idea is that this is a very raw, very gritty take on Batman, and I was all for it. I ate it up. The aesthetic of the city does a very good job of pulling you into that realism as well. The architecture of Gotham is something that very much stood out to me. The cinematography, something that really stood out to me. I feel it's safe to say that I don't think there's ever been another Batman movie shot like this is shot. Reeves and his team do a really good job of painting the picture of Gotham in a way that I don't think we've ever seen before. And the movie just does such a good a job of like just presenting these, like showing us the things that are happening in these very interesting angles, right? It was shot beautifully. The music does a great job of making sure, those impactful moments are all the more impactful. And the suspense, right? The suspenseful moments are all that more suspenseful, right? The music just does a great job of enhancing the emotions and the feelings that we're supposed to be going through throughout watching the film. The fear, especially with our villain, the Riddler, and in addition to that, we can go into performances, right? That was something that was, yeah, I felt it, right? Like whenever they would show the Riddler, it would truly be something remarkable. You would truly believe that. I got lost in it. I truly just got lost in the performance and everything. And I legitimately was like a bit unnerved, a bit uneasy, with, what was being shown in the film. Um, Specifically from the villain. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman was great as well. Her and Pattinson have a great chemistry, really great. And from the very first moment where they share their first scene together, it's like the movie does a very good job of establishing that idea that that these two people are going to have a very strong connection. They both played that off really really well. And Pattinson himself as the Batman, it's interesting, right? He did a really good job. I enjoyed his performance. It's interesting in the sense that, like, we've just, as I mentioned at the start of this, we've never seen a Batman like this. We've never seen a Batman like so moody, so like constantly on edge, right? Just like you see it in his relationship with Alfred. It's much more, it's like distance. It's kind of resentful. It's kind of like there's anger in there, right? There's anger in a lot of the things that he does and goes about, right? We're not dealing with like the billionaire playboy that we've come to know in so many of these different iterations. This is a Batman, as mentioned earlier, that's just kind of worn down, right? He's kind of like he's kind of lost. He's just like sick of it and doesn't even know if what he's doing is worth doing. And he's very still much affected by the things that are kind of pushing him towards doing what he's doing. And you see that in the moments where Bruce Wayne or Batman is several moments where he's comes to see different orphans, right, or children in distress, and you just catch these moments where he's just staring at them, and those moments you feel it, right? Pattinson, he does such a good job where you're able to see that, like, that pain in Batman's eyes, right? That he's still holds on to and latches onto, and it's kind of what is like the inspiration for everything that he's doing. Pattinson does a really good job of playing that off. So all these things coming together, the performances, the music, the sound, the cinematography, the setting, everything, the costumes, the design of the gear, everything was just like put together perfectly to create this image of a, gritty, um, real Gotham. They did such a good job of that. You could clearly see the effort that they put into that. And because of that, it's all the more disappointing the moments where you see the cracks. So you run across these small details that just remove you from that entrancement that the movie is working so hard to keep you in, right? To keep you in that world, gritty, real world of Gotham. And sadly, it just, there are moments that you get pulled out of it, and it's a shame. Things that make you realize that, oh, this is a Batman movie. At the end of the day, this is a comic book movie. This is a quote unquote superhero that we're talking about, right? And don't get me wrong, I feel like when you watch any type of like comic book superhero movie, you got to be able to take things with like a bit of an inch of salt, and be able to, understand that not everything is going to be like perfectly and thoroughly explained, right? There are going to be some things that just kind of like conveniently like plan out and happen. You got to be able to like kind of like take that, right? But when a movie makes so much of an effort, that's the thing with this. It's a great effort put into the realism of the world, right? To make sure that the viewer is just completely engrossed and immersed into like what's going on. When there's so much effort put into that, you have there's even less of a threshold, right? When you start noticing things like Batman taking a beating, man, he's taking a real beating, like I mentioned earlier. Like, this film does not stray away from that. Batman really goes through it in this movie, right? But if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna have Batman like take a beating, it kind of comes off as a bit strange when you then don't show the impact of those beatings, right? When you see Batman, take gunshots and, steal bats and explosions, and then is literally just able to walk up and walk around and act as if nothing happened. It's odd. It's a little odd, and it takes you out of it a bit. When you have Batman walking around in this like thick armored, metal armored, that they go out of their way to show, that makes a very audible clank clank every time he takes a step, right? The several times that he's like introduced in the movie, walking from out of the shadows, you clearly hear his footsteps, and then all of a sudden you expect us to, you try to pull off the classic, the meme, right? The Batman disappearing act, right? Where, the person is kind of like talking to Batman as if he's there, and then he turns and camera pans out, and Batman's nowhere to be seen. He disappeared, right? Although that is like a classic Batman trope, right? Um, it just pulls you out of it. It's like, it maybe I'll take it once, fine, but more than once, it's just kind of like, at that point, it's like choose your lane, Too much of those things happen, and it just runs the risk of just snapping you out of it, right? And all of a sudden, the magic of the entrancement of the film that you're watching, being engrossed and immersed in film, is gone. And once it's gone, it's very hard to get back into it. And unfortunately, that is what happened to me, right? About like, I'd say like maybe within like the final hour of the film. And that's another thing. I did feel like it probably, the runtime also was something that kind of wasn't in its favor as well, right? It just kind of allowed for this opportunity to kind of come up. Yeah, somewhere within the last hour of the film, I was kind of checked out. I hated it. I hated the fact that I was checked out, because I didn't want to be, because in the beginning I was so enthralled, I was so into it. I was like, yes, this is awesome. This is something that we've never seen from this character before, right? This mythos. for me to be, pulled out of it and removed and snapped out of it and kind of checked out, and by the final like third of the film, I was I was disappointed. I was like kind of mad at myself. I was like, "Damn, I wish I could be enjoying this right now, but I just can't. I just yeah." Also, the end does seem, has kind of like these moments where I swear at the end, like the final let's say like the final like 30 minutes of the film, I felt like there was like a good like two or three like moments where the film could have stopped, right? Could have finished, but it just kept going. It kind of like had like this, it just, there was always just one more thing that happened before the movie finished. Like you thought it was done, but then something else happened and you thought it was done there, but then, oh no, wait, something else is happening. It's just like I felt like it just got like it just dragged on just a tad too long, right? It kind of feels like in that last hour, it kind of like goes a bit into high gear and like things just like start happening one after another, and like kind of information dumps and expositions just like start being dumped like kind of very frequently one after another, and it kind of just like yeah, it becomes a lot. It feels like in editing the movie, there may have been, things left out to kind of like feel or allow parts of the movie to give them a little bit more space to breathe, right? But then at that point, of course, we're talking about, a film longer than 3 hours, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a director's cut or another cut out there that's like 3.5 or maybe even closer to 4 hours, that's more drawn out, that's more fulfilling in a lot of the reveals and a lot of the things that happen towards the end of the film that lead towards the conclusion. This made it really hard for me to kind of like determine like at the end, wow, how to take the ending, because it kind of feels like there's no winners and no losers, and it felt a little off to me. But after thinking about it, it makes sense, and it's actually probably maybe the probably perfect way to end a Batman movie. After thinking about it some more, I kind of came to the realization that it was actually it's like makes the most sense for a Batman movie to end like that, right? It's it's actually kind of like the perfect epitome of Batman's plight with Gotham, right? Because that's the thing. Gotham is always Gotham, right? Gotham always has problems, and Batman's always there to fix them, right? So having the movie end in that way, where you kind of feel like there are no winners and no losers, is kind of like, yeah, it's actually pretty perfect. There's like little victories on both sides, but you can't actually say that any one side won, right? Neither the Batman won completely, nor the Riddler won completely, right? But they both get like their little W's, and yeah, that's actually probably the best way you can end a Batman story. And that is my review of the Batman. Please let me know what you think. If you agree with anything that I said. If you disagree, especially, please let me know in the comments. I do this for the discussion mainly, and I'd love to hear other people's points of views of the movie, what they thought about it. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and leave a like as well while you're down there, and subscribe if you're into I like doing videos like this, talking about movies. I also enjoy anime and TV shows and video games. So yeah, if any of those things are up your alley, go ahead and hit subscribe. I thank you so much if you got into this point and watching the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one.